So, We Own This City. Out of the 3 TV shows from this year I had my eye on, the other 2 being Tokyo Vice and The Offer, this is the one I was probably looking forward to the most. From the creator of The Wire, one of my favourite shows, David Simon brings us the story based on the non-fiction book of the same name, dealing with the rise and the fall of the Baltimore Police Department's Gun Trace Task Force, and the corruption surrounding its members. 8 officers were charged and convicted on various corruption charges. Only recently, we're talking 2018, 2019. The primary character being Sergent Wayne Jenkins, played by Jon Bernthal in fiery form. It's pretty crazy when you think about it that all of the shenanigans depicted in this show occurred after The Wire had already aired. Now, right off the bat, something needs to be said. Yes, it's Simon. Yes, it's Baltimore. It's cops and drug dealers. It's corruption. It even has many of the cast of The Wire returning and lines and themes associated with previous Simon projects. But you cannot compare We Own This City to The Wire. If you do, chances are you won't enjoy it at all. They're very different. For one, We Own This City is only a miniseries. It deals with a specific small group of characters. It's a true story, and yes, it isn't anywhere near on the level of The Wire. So if The Wire is in your head when you're seeing it, you will miss the qualities of the show while finding yourself missing The Wire. The way to approach this show is not, oh look, the creator of The Wire is back with a series on Baltimore cops. It's, oh look, they've made a show on the Gun Trace Task Force scandal. So what is it actually about? Well, the task force, in addition to taking drugs and guns off the street as they're tasked to do so, skims off the top when they find cash from dealers and in dealers' homes. Some cops don't want anything to do with it and are thus ostracized. This stealing is very much normalized behavior, it seems. It's all part of the game, to borrow a phrase from The Wire, and we've seen similar things tackled in things like Prince of the City and Serpico. But the task force's behaviour, Jenkins in particular, becomes more and more extreme, to the point where they are literally stopping cars and robbing people on the spot. There's harassment, planting of fake evidence, brutality, abuse, even selling off drugs that you've stolen. Some of the scenes you see and the images in the opening title card seem similar to those videos you see of Israeli police beating on citizens. There is really a vibe of constant oppression and claustrophobia you get from the show, in reference to the Baltimore citizens. The task force's crimes are followed by the feds on a wiretap, and simultaneously we follow an attorney for the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, Nicola Steele, who I believe is one of the few fictional characters, being an amalgamation of different real-life people, and she goes around interviewing people on the Baltimore Police Department's culture and practices. I liked We Own This City. I would never watch it again, but as a one-time viewing, it was interesting from an educational perspective, just to see what went down and who these people were, what they did, and what eventually happened to them. It's not exactly the most entertaining show in the world. It isn't very flashy. There's lots of technical jargon. Most of the show is people sitting at desks, and dare I say it, it might come off as a little dry or boring for some. There's a clinical feel about it, a documentary aroma. Even the colour palette looks like it's had all its life sucked from it. With that being said, it was a nice change of pace for me in recent months to see something down to earth. I remember actually watching it and I was about 4 episodes in and I thought, this is really quite interesting. And because it was a mini-series, I thought it had maybe 10 episodes or at the very least 8. And when I checked and saw there was only 2 episodes left, it did have an impact on my impression. There was an element where I was thinking, wait, is that it? But even still, I suppose it is a true story, so they don't want to embellish things for the sake of entertainment. Speaking of which, this show feels angry. It feels like the people who made it were really angry at the events depicted. With The Wire, it's like, oh, let's make a cop show highlighting institutionalized corruption and bureaucracies based on real-life anecdotes. But We Own This City is straight up, fuck this, take a look at how fucked things are, let me tell it like it is. That's the kind of feeling you get, the vibe you get from the show. You know how they say about The Wire where it doesn't care if you don't pay attention? This series is a little different in that it actively punishes you if you don't. And that's mainly because it's told in a really complex, non-linear fashion, jumping back and forward in timeline constantly. I suppose it was the most appropriate way to do it, because if you told the story in a linear fashion, it would be difficult to keep Steele's story at the same pace as Jenkins, and you'd have to just keep skipping months at a time until something interesting in the characters' lives happened. It is complex, some might say convoluted, and it's practically impossible to keep up to date with what year you're in. But it's not too hard to get an overall gist. You pick up on clues, like the length of Bernthal's facial hair, which was actually very helpful in determining where you were in the timeline. One thing I didn't like was the way characters' dialogue was written. Something about the dialogue feels stiff. It feels like I'm being lectured through monologues and speeches about how bad institutions are and how things need to change. Characters don't talk how people in the real world do. You'll have several scenes where someone asks a cop a question, or the mayor, the police commissioner, or Steele, and they'll just launch into a righteous sounding speech. They might as well have just pushed the person who asked the question out of the way and looked straight at us at the camera. It felt like a university lecture on civil rights at times, like the writers were so emotionally invested at getting their points across, they forgot they were supposed to be writing three-dimensional characters, not just puppets through whom they are sending their message through. The Wire did this much better, and not to mention We Own This City has characters telling me things The Wire already showed me. There's no bigger example of this than the character of Nicola Steele, who funnily enough I think is one of the few characters who wasn't a real person, as I already said. She serves little purpose other than to go around moaning about how bad things are and needing change, interviewing characters here and there, and then she pisses off and quits her job at the end, telling her subordinate it's his turn. I get what they were doing, and I know they only have about 6 hours, but I really don't think the show would have hurt if the character was completely cut out, with that time being dedicated to showing us the very thing Steele was lecturing us about. Finally, as someone who's only recently finished The Wire, it was so weird seeing actors from the show pop up in We Own This City, like Jamie Hector, that's the cold, ruthless Marlo Stanfield, playing an honest cop, or Poot, who's also a cop in the show. But all in all, I thought We Own This City was okay for a one-time viewing. It's actually incredible to think all of this stuff was happening and only very recently. It's very easy to kind of fall into this narrative that we in the quote-unquote civilized world have moved on from things like police corruption and brutality and cops being involved in dodgy things, but of course this stuff is only very recent history. It's very much still going on. Anyway, what did you think of it? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.